Hey everybody! Ooh, I just went for a power walk because it's so gorgeous out. All right, I want to make sure. I just had a chocolate muffin. Oh my goodness! All right, we're looking all right. We're looking all right. Welcome everyone to Let's Talk Sex Tuesdays. It's almost the end of August. It's a gorgeous sunny day where I live, and I'm just trying to enjoy it and enjoy you all while we pop in here. I am beyond stoked about today's topic. I'm super passionate about it. It's something I'm just starting to step into. And I hope there's some folks that join live today because I really want to have like a discussion about this. I want to hear your experiences and your comments. And even if you don't join live, like please do share, DM me. Like I'm so curious about people's experience with this and other people's kind of thoughts. Yeah, I'm super pumped. And it's actually kind of quite apropos because I just got off my second period after having the baby. And just like my first one, it floored me, like floored me. I was in bed for like a full day and 2 half days. Just completely useless. Not so much emotional, but physically. Yeah, just like destroyed. And I'm like, okay, is this my new menstruation experience? Is this something that women typically go through after they have a baby? Does it go away after a while? What is going on with my hormones? So today we are talking about hormones, and specifically we're talking about why I am done blaming mine for my sort of emotional reactions. I had a really big epiphany during my pregnancy, and I have this kind of hypothesis that I'm working with that I really want to share and explore with everybody. So I'm just going to dive into kind of how I came to this, and then we can chat more if folks pop on. So why am I done blaming my hormones? And how did my pregnancy sort of play a role in me making that discovery? Well, it's been a while now. My babe is almost 14 months. She'll be 14 months next week. So I was pregnant, a year and a bit ago. And that journey was a mediumly tough one, right? Like it wasn't as bad or as tough as many people experience. And it wasn't as easy as many people experience either. I had morning sickness for about 25 weeks. Not like hospitalization morning sickness, but just nauseous and puking pretty much every day for almost my entire pregnancy. And my physical body did pretty good. And for the most part, I didn't feel a lot of that sort of stereotypical hormonal thing, where people are like, oh, my hormones, my hormones. I definitely had moments of it, but it wasn't sort of like overwhelming, right? My hormones did things like make me really sensitive to scary movies. We were watching this movie from the 80s called The Abyss. This guy kind of goes mad throughout. Several times during the movie, my partner checked in with me to be like, are you okay? Like, do you want to keep watching this? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. But I wasn't really enjoying it, and my whole body was like tensing and reacting to the emotional cues in this film. And then we finally decided to stop it, and we got ready for bed, and something just cracked in me, and I literally sobbed for like an hour. That emotion kind of came spilling out. And like a lot of women that I know, I definitely experienced like pregnancy rage and postpartum like rage and anger. And it was really that experience that got me thinking about this notion of like blaming your hormones. And basically, like throughout my pregnancy, when I had these big moments, right, a big cry, maybe my partner did something really small, but it made me feel very emotional. I would hear myself saying, it's just my hormones, or it's just my hormones. Not a big deal. We can ignore this. It's just my hormones being weird. And in fact, I even did it the other day. We were having kind of a heavy conversation in our relationship, and I just came off my period, and I've been feeling kind of weird, and I started like crying out of the blue, which is a weird experience when you sort of feel like you're involuntarily crying, like you're not sure what triggered the tears, and it feels like it's kind of out of nowhere. And I remember being like, oh, it's my hormones. I've been on my period. Let's remember it's my hormones. So I had this tendency of sort of like writing it off, right? Well, it's just my hormones. It's not a big deal. Just my hormones, not a big deal. Or like, not a big deal, ignore it, whatever, discard it, right? Instead of pay attention to it. There's interesting and important cues here. So what I noticed during my pregnancy, and I'd love to hear if this was other people's experience as well, was that it was just kind of like my sensitivity meter was tipped up. So things that would ordinarily annoy me or frustrate me or make me go like, roll my eyes or just feel a pang of some kind of emotion, like a small version, were basically magnified like 100%, right? And typically these emotions were triggered during moments when I was making a choice I didn't want to make, maybe saying yes to a social engagement I didn't really want to, feeling fatigued or annoyed because I had too much going on, because I had committed too many yeses to too many people, just places where I had basically overextended myself, gone past my limits, or not set a boundary with people, essentially. Or I was like watching this film, like feeding myself emotions that weren't really like helpful or supportive. So I observed that during my pregnancy, right, all these little emotional reactions, which would normally just be like a little speed bump, like I'm talking to someone, I'm about to say yes to plans with them, I feel this little twinge in me that's like, maybe I shouldn't do that because I'm already pretty committed this week. I would normally just proceed over that like it was a little speed bump, right? When pregnant, that speed bump became this like raging, screaming little thing inside of me that was like, F no, like we are not doing that. And so what I realized was that as these speed bumps were magnified, I was like, holy crow, all of these things that I'm calling like speed bumps, all these times that I am enduring things, tolerating things, and just sitting in my discomfort and ignoring it because I'm feeling too lazy to deal with it, are times when my intuition is speaking to me. My inner knowing is speaking to me. My little fairy godmother is speaking to me. Whatever you want to call it. Universe is speaking to me. That inner part of me that knows my limits and my boundaries and what I can give and what I can't is speaking to me. And when I wasn't like hopped up on pregnancy hormones, it was very easy to basically bulldoze over her and say, yeah, whatever, lady, and move on. And I would feel some emotional repercussions, but those emotional repercussions were quite small, right? They were like these speed bumps that I mentioned. Or my resiliency for these speed bumps was much higher. When I was pregnant and my hormones are like, wah, right? All of a sudden those speed bumps are like, my intuition's not like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that. She's like, F no, we are not doing this. Sit down, stop what you're doing. That's it. I am not tolerating being ignored anymore. My hormones basically allowed my intuition to no longer take shit from me and speak super loudly to me in a way that I could not ignore her, right? And that happens on a lot of levels. That happens on a physical level where, I was certainly like many women just being like, pregnancy, yeah, and I'm also going to be superwoman and keep running my business and keep doing all these things. And I did, and my body was like, yeah, no, lady, like, you're going to be sick every day. We're going to make you puke because if you're not going to rest and you're not going to take this opportunity to slow down, which is what you need to do because you're building a human, then we're going to force you to do that. I always like to think of like Amy Schumer as a perfect example as well, right? Like she booked a bunch of tours during her pregnancy, and you should, right? And many women don't have that experience, and they stay physically capable to do all kinds of things, and that's awesome. And for others of us, that's not our experience. And our bodies and our intuitions tell us what we need. And it's usually related to lessons like, I need to learn how to slow down and surrender. And my body gave me that lesson like pretty damn hardcore during my pregnancy. So Amy Schumer was like, I'm touring, I'm going, like, I'm not letting this pregnancy slow me down. I'm a feminist, I can do all the stuff. Yes, you can, totally. And then her body was like, oh, hell no, lady. And, you know, she was in the hospital with, I forget for the word for it, but that very extreme version of morning sickness that has you puking a ton, right? So our bodies know. They are wise ladies. And we are very good at ignoring them and stepping over them and pushing them aside. And on a typical day in your typical cycle, it can feel fairly easy to do that. And the consequences are quite low. But what I observed during my my pregnancy was that my hormones amplified that voice. They made it so that it was really hard to ignore her. And where I would get a little bit mad pregnant, I would get like major mad about something. So mad that I would like have to say no, or have to decline, or have to call back and change my mind, right? Because my body was very clear about what she wanted and what she needed. So I'm experiencing this and I'm going, oh, okay. Every time I'm ignoring my intuition, like now that I'm pregnant, she's basically standing up for herself. And it made me think back to this workshop that I had done about 5 years ago, when I first encountered this notion of your period being your source of power. And the time of your menstruation, when you're bleeding, being this time of connection to your intuition, to your inner source, to your inner wisdom, a time to slow down and really listen. And I sort of understood that in principle, but I was having a hard time figuring out like what that literally meant. And at the time I was also on a journey to like discover what the hell my intuition was anyways, right? Like, what is your intuition? How do you follow it? I don't know. So I've learned a lot since then. And well, there will always be more to learn. But basically this notion of your period being a beautiful portal to your inner self was introduced to me. So when I started making these observations during my pregnancy, I realized that's what people are talking about when they're talking about your period being a time of potency and of connection, right? So your hormones are cycling through your body during your entire menstrual cycle, right? You're getting a lot of estrogen buildup in the first half. You're getting a lot of progesterone and like shedding in the second half. So your hormones are shifting the entire time you're on this cycle. And during your period, the physical feelings that you might have, pain, nausea, fatigue, those kinds of things are all cues from your body to slow down, to rest, to relax, to look inwards, to reflect, and to listen to that little inner voice, right? That PMS, that rage, those feelings that we go through are our hormones amplifying our intuitive voice, saying, I will not stand for this. You have to make different choices. You have to listen to me. And I would posit that when we are feeling PMSy and when we are going through our periods, if we can take the space and time to slow down, right? Hear the intuitive direction behind that emotion, right? So usually when we're feeling an emotion like that, it's because we've ignored something our intuition is asking of us. So can we slow down enough to ask ourselves what's behind the feeling, what need is being ignored behind the feeling, so that we can listen to it. And if we listen to it, we are likely not to ignore the speed bump and therefore to minimize the crazy emotions that we're feeling, right? And the same is true for menopause as well, right? Your hormones are shifting during that time. Your period is going away. It's becoming more erratic. It's shifting. The way hormones cycle through your body is shifting. Hot flashes, different physical signs that are happening from you are messages and cues from your body and like led from your vagina. Your vagina is the center of your like estrogen, progesterone, and how all those hormones cycle through your body. So this is what I mean when I say your vagina is listening, talking to you, like not only on the level of her muscles and her discharge and what's happening with her and how she's responding to sex and touch and pleasure, but also your cycle and your experience with it and how you physically go through it, whether you're losing your cycle, whether you're gaining your cycle. I just lost and gained mine, right, through pregnancy, breastfeeding, right? That's another time where our hormones are changing. It's an invitation. So what does that mean? That means, right, we are caught in this patriarchal setup where we're told that our periods are an inconvenience, an annoyance. We're just supposed to pop a pill, shove a tampon in there, and plow through our days, right? Because the patriarchy, right, the world is all about our productivity, getting things done, go, 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 move, move, move. And the feminine, right, our periods, intuition, this is all about slowing down. This is all about living with the rhythms. This is all about there's a time to shine bright and go, go, go. And there's a time to rest and digest and be inward. There are seasons, right, to the year. There are seasons to each month. This is why people talk about planning your life around your cycle. In the second half of your cycle, you know, in the first half when you got your period, anyways, during the time when you have your period, when you're bleeding, is the time to rest, is the time to tune in, is the time to relax and take care and release stuff. And your body physically supports you in doing that by almost making you physically ill, which is what happened to me. I am having very strong period reactions right now. I am being forced, literally forced, to lie in bed, rest, shed, and release. And when I do that work, it allows me to then shine brightly and bring my magic to the world in the second half of my period. All this to say, we need to reclaim this power. So many of us have no idea what's going on with our cycle. Our periods take us by surprise. We have no clue when we're bleeding. We have no clue when we're ovulating. We have no clue what's happening with the different signs, like what's talking to us, what's not with our bodies. And we take PMS as sort of like a given thing. It just happens. It's an annoyance. Everyone's going to write us off as being crazy and emotional, and we're going to write ourselves off as being crazy and emotional too. And it is time to stop that. It is time to see and recognize that when we're going through our period or times when our hormones are changing, these are opportunities to tune in and listen to our bodies. These are opportunities to tune in and listen to our inner wisdom and not write her off, and to recognize that the stronger your symptoms and the stronger your emotions, the more loudly your intuition is trying to speak to you because you're not listening. If you stop and take the time to listen, she will support you and your symptoms will be reduced. This is my hypothesis. It is backed up by so many things. I'm so excited to dive into a new book I just heard about called The Fifth Vital Sign. It's all about your period and how your period is another indicator for your overall health, because how your hormones cycle through your body affects everything from your bone mass to your mental health, your risks of certain cancers, like all kinds of things. So our periods are so important. Our hormones are like jet fuel for our intuition. They're not to be written off. They're not to be blamed. They're not to be discounted. This is not just my hormones. It is like, thank you, hormones, for allowing my intuition to speak so loudly and clearly to me that I must follow through. And when we do that, we live more happy, we live more contented, we live more in alignment, we live in a way that's more aligned, and therefore we are more magnetic and more open to receiving the things that we want to receive. that is my rant today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm super interested in resources on this topic. So if you've been like charting your period forever and you have books that you love on this topic or resources that you use, please, please, please do share them with me, with others. I'm super curious to learn more about this topic. And let me know your experiences. Is this resonating with you? Have you felt that idea of your little intuition being like, no, God damn it, stomping her foot down and being like, you are going to listen to me now? Or are you like, it's no big, you're crazy. I would love to hear. This is about taking back our power. This is about listening to our vaginas and our bodies because they are not to be discounted. They are part of ourselves. Have a lovely Tuesday. Share far and wide. I'm headed over to Instagram to do the same, and I will see you next week. Mwah.